The alarm made a loud sound in the quiet control room. Lieutenant Commander Jake Martinez looked up from his coffee. His eyes went to the screen in front of him. Something was wrong. The signal was old, very old. It used a format that humans stopped using 300 years ago. Jake worked at Sentinel-7, a space station far from Earth. His job was to watch for signals from deep space. Most days were boring. Today was different. He pressed a button on his desk. "Chief Sullivan, get to the command deck. We have something strange here," Jake said into the speaker. Amy Sullivan arrived 5 minutes later. She was the best technician on the station. Her fingers moved fast across the controls. She tried to clean up the signal. It was hard to understand. "There was too much noise. Where is it coming from?" Captain Greg Harrison asked. He had rushed to the command deck when he heard the news. "The Kepler sector, sir," Jake said. "That is Council space. The aliens control that area." The Galactic Cooperative Council was a group of 7 alien species. They lived far from human space. For many years, they kept away from humans. They thought humans were too violent, too dangerous. The Council never asked humans for help. Until now, Amy worked for 3 hours. Her eyes hurt from looking at the screen. Finally, the signal became clear. A voice came through the speakers. It was a female voice speaking through a translator. "This is Ambassador Veltara of the Sivari people. We need help. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help now." The voice shook with fear. Everyone in the command room stopped what they were doing. They listened. 3 weeks ago, an enemy came to our space. We call them the Vorax Swarm. They are like nothing we have seen before. They destroy everything. They consume planets, stations, ships. Our fleets tried to stop them. We failed. Veltara's voice broke. There was a pause. Then she continued. "My homeworld is gone. Velara Prime fell 2 days ago. Billions of my people are dead. The survivors are scattered across refugee stations. The swarm is moving toward the Nexus sector. There are 12 billion civilians there. They have no way to escape." Captain Harrison felt cold. 12 billion lives. The number was too big to understand. "Our council asked me to send this message. We know humans come from a death world. We know you are warriors. We were afraid of you. We kept you away from us, but now we are begging. Please help us. The swarm will kill us all if you do not come." The message ended. The control room was silent. Jake looked at Captain Harrison. The captain's face was hard. "Send this to Earth Command immediately," Harrison said. "Mark it Priority 1. The message reached Earth in 4 hours. The Terran Coalition Security Council met right away. The room was full of important people. Military officers, government leaders, scientists. They all watched the recording of Veltara's message. Admiral Linda Blackwood stood up. She was the commander of the 5th Fleet. Her uniform had many medals on it. She had fought in every major conflict for 30 years. "We have to go," she said. Her voice was strong and clear. "These beings need our help. It does not matter that they pushed us away before. What matters is that people are dying." Some council members disagreed. They said it was too dangerous. They said the aliens had treated humans badly. Why should humans risk their lives for them? Major Kyle Peterson spoke next. He was a Marine commander. His men had saved thousands of lives during the colony wars. "My Marines are ready to go," he said. "We did not become soldiers to stand by while innocent people die. That is not who we are." President Victoria Kane listened to everyone. She was a small woman with gray hair, but when she spoke, people listened. "Humanity has always helped those in need," she said. "That is what makes us strong. Not our weapons, not our ships, our willingness to stand up for others. I am authorizing military action. Admiral Blackwood, prepare the 3rd Battle Fleet for immediate deployment." The room erupted in noise. People talked all at once. Some were excited. Some were worried. But the decision was made. The 3rd Battle Fleet was one of humanity's strongest forces. It had 27 warships. The biggest was the Valkyrie, a massive dreadnought 3 kilometers long. There were also 12 heavy cruisers and many smaller ships. Thousands of Marines were ready to fight. The fleet gathered at the Mars orbital shipyards. It was an amazing sight. Each ship was painted in dark gray colors. Their hulls were covered with weapons, railguns, missile launchers, and the new plasma lance projectors. These weapons had never been used in real combat before. Jake Martinez was transferred to the Valkyrie. He would work as a tactical liaison. It was a big promotion. He walked through the massive ship, looking at everything. The corridors were wide and clean. Crew members rushed past him, preparing for departure. Major Peterson gathered his Marines in the training hall. There were 2,000 of them. They wore combat armor and carried powerful weapons. Peterson looked at their faces. They were young, most of them, but they were ready. "Listen up," Peterson said. His voice echoed in the large room. "We are going to help people who never helped us. Some of you might think that is stupid, but I will tell you something. Being a Marine means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. It does not matter if they like us or not. It matters that they need us." The Marines shouted their approval. Captain Rachel Gomez stood next to Peterson. She was his second in command. She had short black hair and sharp eyes. "The swarm is different from anything we have fought before," she told the Marines. "They adapt. They learn. We will need to be smart and fast. Stay alert. Follow orders. Take care of each other." On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Admiral Blackwood sat in the command chair. She looked at the main screen. It showed all 27 ships in formation. They were ready to leave. "All ships, this is Admiral Blackwood," she said into the communication system. "Today we begin a mission that will test us. We are going to save billions of lives. The Council species thought we were too violent, too dangerous. Now they will see what human strength really means. It means standing up when others fall down. It means fighting when others run away. It means doing the right thing no matter the cost." She paused, then continued. "The journey will take 3 weeks. We will train every day. We will prepare for every possibility. And when we arrive, we will show the galaxy what humanity is made of. All ships engage jump drives. Destination, Kepler sector." One by one, the ships disappeared. They jumped into faster-than-light travel. Space bent around them. They were going to war. Back on Sentinel-7, Captain Harrison watched the fleet leave. Amy Sullivan stood next to him. "Do you think they can win?" she asked. Harrison was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "If anyone can do it, humans can. We are stubborn like that. We do not know how to give up." Far away in the Kepler sector, Ambassador Veltara sat in a dark room. She had sent her message days ago. She did not know if anyone had heard it. Around her, the refugee station was crowded with survivors. They were scared. They had lost everything. Veltara closed her eyes. She prayed to the old gods of her people. She asked them to send help. She asked them to send someone brave enough to fight the darkness. She did not know that help was already coming. She did not know that the Deathworlders had answered her call. She did not know that humanity was on its way, bringing fire and fury to defend strangers they had never met. The third battle fleet traveled through the dark between stars. Inside the ships, humans prepared for battle. They checked their weapons. They studied intelligence reports. They trained in simulators. They knew the fight ahead would be hard. Many of them might not come home, but they went anyway. Because that is what humans do. When someone calls for help, humans answer, even if it costs everything. Even if the ones calling had once turned them away. Because in the end, doing the right thing is more important than holding grudges. The galaxy was about to learn something important about the species from the death world called Earth. They were not just warriors. They were protectors, and when they made a promise to help, nothing in the universe could stop them from keeping it. The third battle fleet moved through space like a pack of metal wolves. The Valkyrie led the way. Behind it, 26 other ships followed in perfect formation. They looked beautiful and deadly at the same time. Jake Martinez stood on the observation deck. Through the window, he could see the other ships. Their engines glowed blue in the darkness. He felt proud to be part of this fleet, but he also felt afraid. They were going to fight an enemy that had destroyed entire worlds. Every day, Admiral Blackwood made the fleet practice. They ran battle drills. They practiced shooting at targets. They learned how to work together as a team. The Admiral was tough but fair. She knew that training would save lives when the real fighting started. Jake spent his days studying intelligence reports about the Vorax swarm. The information was scary. The swarm did not just destroy things. It learned from every battle. If you used a tactic once, the swarm would find a way to counter it the next time. The enemy was getting smarter and stronger with each fight. "This is bad," Jake said to his team. "The swarm adapts too fast. We need to be unpredictable." Major Peterson drilled his Marines hard. They trained in combat simulators for 8 hours every day. The simulators created fake enemies that looked like the swarm. The Marines practiced fighting in teams. They learned to move fast and think faster. Captain Gomez watched her Marines train. She saw them get tired. She saw them make mistakes, but she also saw them improve. They were becoming better soldiers every day. Remember, she told them, the swarm is strong, but it thinks like a hive. We think as individuals. That is our advantage. Be creative. Be unpredictable. Do not do what the enemy expects. After 10 days of travel, something appeared on the sensors. It was a group of ships, but they were moving slowly. They were damaged. Admiral Blackwood ordered the fleet to stop. Those are refugee ships, Jake said, looking at his screen. They are in bad shape. Life support is failing on most of them. The Admiral did not hesitate. All ships prepared to render aid. Medical teams, get ready. We are going to help these people. The human ship surrounded the refugee convoy. Airlocks connected. Medical teams rushed into the damaged ships. What they found made them angry and sad. The refugee ships were full of wounded aliens. Many were dying. Children cried for their parents. Old ones sat in corners staring at nothing. Dr. Nina Scott was the chief medical officer. She was a tall woman with kind eyes. She moved through the refugee ship, treating wounds and giving medicine. Her team worked without stopping. They saved as many lives as they could. The aliens had never seen humans before. Some were afraid at first. Humans were bigger and stronger than most alien species. But the fear went away when they saw how gentle the human doctors were. The humans did not care that these aliens had once rejected humanity. They only cared about helping. Among the refugees was Ambassador Veltara. She looked terrible. Her skin was pale. Her clothes were torn. She had not eaten well in days. When she saw Admiral Blackwood, she started to cry. The two women met in the refugee ship's command room. Veltara tried to stand straight, to be dignified, but her legs were weak. She almost fell. Admiral Blackwood caught her. "Easy," Blackwood said. "You are safe now." Veltara looked up at the human admiral. Tears ran down her face. "I am so ashamed," she said through her translator. "My people treated yours badly. We called you dangerous. We kept you away from us, and now I have to beg for your help. I am so sorry." Admiral Blackwood helped Veltara sit down. She gave her a bottle of water. "Listen to me," Blackwood said. Her voice was firm but kind. "When someone is in trouble, you help them. That is what decent people do. It does not matter what happened before. What matters is what we do now." Veltara drank the water. She felt a little better. Then she told the Admiral everything she knew about the swarm. "The swarm is controlled by command nodes," she explained. "Each node is a giant living ship. It controls hundreds of smaller vessels. If you destroy a node, the swarm loses organization. But the nodes are very hard to kill. They have thick armor and powerful weapons." This was important information. Jake wrote everything down. He would add it to the intelligence reports. Knowing about the command nodes gave them a target, a way to fight back. The fleet stayed with the refugees for 2 days. They gave them food, medicine, and supplies. They fixed the refugee ships as much as they could. When it was time to leave, the refugees thanked the humans over and over. Veltara decided to travel with the human fleet. She could provide information and help translate if they met other aliens. She moved to the Valkyrie and was given a small room near the bridge. The fleet continued its journey. After 11 more days, they reached the final jump gate. Beyond it was the Kepler sector. Admiral Blackwood called all her senior officers to a meeting. "This is it," she said. "When we come out of that jump, we will be in a war zone. Stay alert, follow your training, and remember why we are here. We are here to save lives." The fleet jumped through the gate. What they saw on the other side was horrible. The Kepler sector was full of debris. Pieces of destroyed stations floated everywhere. Dead ships drifted in the darkness. Some planets showed signs of bombardment from orbit. This had been a place where millions lived and worked. Now it was a graveyard. "Sensors are picking up the swarm," Jake reported. "They are 3 systems away, attacking a mining colony." Admiral Blackwood made a decision. They would not wait for the swarm to come to them. They would attack first. She divided the fleet into 3 groups. The main battle group would engage the swarm directly. A strike group led by Captain Emma Wright would try to find and destroy a command node. The third group would protect the refugee stations and evacuate civilians. The fleet split up and moved to their positions. 2 days later, the swarm detected them. The enemy came fast. Hundreds of swarm vessels appeared on the sensors. They were strange-looking ships, organic and alive. They pulsed with sickly light. They looked like giant insects made of flesh and bone. "All ships, battle stations," Admiral Blackwood ordered. This is what we came here for. Show them what humans can do. The swarm attacked without warning. They fired streams of corrosive projectiles. The projectiles hit human shields and burned through them. Alarms sounded on every ship. The battle had begun. The human ships fought back. Railguns fired metal slugs at incredible speed. The slugs tore through swarm vessels like paper. Missiles streaked through space, exploding in bright flashes. The new plasma lances activated. Beams of superheated plasma cut through the enemy ships, burning them from the inside out. Jake coordinated the battle from his tactical station. His screen showed hundreds of contacts. He called out targets to the weapons officers. Focus fire on that cluster. 3 ships mark them now. The Valkyrie's guns roared. 3 swarm ships exploded. But more came to replace them. The swarm was like an endless wave. They kept coming and coming. The swarm tried to swarm individual human ships surrounding them and attacking from all sides. But Admiral Blackwood had prepared for this. The human ships fought in pairs and groups. When one ship was attacked, others covered it. They protected each other. The battle lasted 3 hours. It was brutal and violent. The space around them was filled with explosions and debris. 2 human cruisers were badly damaged. Many crew members were hurt, but they held their line. They did not retreat. Slowly, the tide turned. The swarm started to lose. More and more of their ships were destroyed. The plasma lances proved to be devastating weapons. The swarm had never seen anything like them before. They could not adapt fast enough. Finally, the last swarm ship was destroyed. The vanguard force was gone. The human fleet floated in the wreckage, damaged but victorious. Cheers erupted on every ship. They had won their first battle. Admiral Blackwood allowed herself a small smile. But she knew this was just the beginning. The main swarm force was still out there. This was only a small taste of what was coming. On the refugee stations, aliens watched through their telescopes and sensors. They had seen the battle. They could not believe what they witnessed. The humans had fought the swarm and won. It seemed impossible. The swarm had destroyed every council fleet that faced it. But the humans had beaten them. Veltara stood on the Valkyrie's bridge. She had watched the whole battle. She saw how the humans fought with courage and skill. She saw how they protected each other. She understood now why humans were called Deathworlders. They were strong, yes, but more than that, they refused to give up. They refused to let fear control them. "Thank you," she said quietly to Admiral Blackwood. The Admiral nodded. "We are not done yet, but we just proved something important. The swarm can be beaten. Now we need to find one of those command nodes and destroy it." The fleet began repairs. Medical teams treated the wounded. Engineers fixed damaged systems. Everyone knew they needed to be ready. The real fight was still ahead, but for the first time since the swarm appeared, there was hope. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were not going to let the galaxy fall into darkness. 3 days after the first victory, bad news arrived. The swarm was changing. Scout ships brought back reports that made everyone worried. The enemy had developed new armor. The plasma lances that worked so well before were now less effective. The swarm was adapting faster than anyone expected. Lieutenant Sarah Kemp was the fleet's chief science officer. She spent hours studying the data from destroyed swarm vessels. What she found was frightening. The swarm used genetic engineering. They took DNA and technology from the species they consumed. Each victim made the swarm stronger. "We have a serious problem," Sarah told Admiral Blackwood. "If the swarm captures any of our ships, they will absorb our technology and biology. They could become unstoppable." The Admiral's face went hard. "Then we make sure they never capture our ships. All vessels are to activate self-destruct if boarding is imminent. No exceptions." Meanwhile, Captain Emma Wright led her strike group deep into enemy territory. They moved quietly, using every trick they knew to avoid detection. Their mission was to find a command node. For 7 days, they played hide-and-seek with the swarm. Lieutenant Ben Howard worked the sensors on Wright's ship, the Thunderbolt. He was good at his job. On the 8th day, he found what they were looking for. "Captain, I have it. Massive biosignature, 10 kilometers long. It matches the description of a command node." Wright looked at the tactical display. The node was huge, bigger than any ship she had ever seen. Around it were hundreds of swarm vessels acting as guards. A direct attack would be suicide. She sent the information back to Admiral Blackwood. A meeting was called. All the senior officers gathered in the Valkyrie's war room. They looked at the holographic display of the command node. Major Peterson studied the display carefully. He had an idea. We cannot get through that defensive screen with ships, but what if we go around it? My Marines can insert directly onto the node's surface. We plant charges at critical points and blow it from the inside. Captain Gomez looked at Peterson. Sir, that is a one-way trip. Even if we plant the charges, we would never make it out before detonation. Peterson nodded. I know, but it will work, and billions of lives are at stake. Admiral Blackwood did not like it, but she could not see another option. She approved the mission. Peterson called for volunteers. Every single Marine stepped forward. He chose 40 of the best, including Gomez and Sergeant Danny Cruz, a demolitions expert. They would use stealth drop pods. The pods would be launched from far away. They would look like debris until the last moment. Then they would activate thrusters and land on the node's surface. The day of the mission arrived. The 40 Marines said goodbye to their friends. Some wrote letters to family back home. They knew they were not coming back. But not one of them complained. They understood what was at stake. Major Peterson stood in the pod bay. He looked at his Marines. They were the bravest people he had ever known. Today we do something that will save billions of lives, he said. People will remember what we do here. Not because we died, but because we chose to stand up when it mattered. I am proud to serve with you all. The Marines climbed into their pods. One by one, the pods launched. They flew through space like tiny bullets. For 10 minutes, everything went according to plan. Then disaster struck. One pod's stealth field failed. Private Lisa Chen's pod became visible to the swarm. Alarms sounded across the swarm vessels. They knew something was wrong. Lisa made a split-second decision. She activated her thrusters and aimed her pod at the nearest swarm ship. She crashed into it at full speed. The explosion was huge. It created a distraction. The other 39 pods landed safely while the swarm was looking at the explosion. The Marines hit the surface of the command node. What they found was worse than any nightmare. The surface was alive. It pulsed with organic matter. Pools of acid bubbled everywhere. Defensive organisms crawled around looking for threats. The Marines wore powered armor. It protected them from the acid and gave them extra strength. They fought their way forward, using their weapons to blast through the defensive creatures. Amy Sullivan guided them from the Valkyrie. She had hacked into the swarm's bioelectric network. She could see a crude map of the node's internal structure. She told the Marines where to go and where to plant the charges. The fighting was brutal. The defensive organisms were fast and deadly. They had sharp claws and acid spit. Marine after Marine fell. But the survivors pushed forward. They had a mission to complete. Sergeant Cruz moved from position to position, planting plasma charges. These charges were powerful enough to tear through the node's structure. But they had to be placed exactly right. Cruz worked with steady hands even as fighting raged around him. 2 Marines had to stay behind to hold a choke point. Corporal Stephen Hughes and Private Kevin Baker volunteered. They set up their weapons and prepared to die. The other Marines moved past them. Behind them, they heard the sound of gunfire. Then silence. Hughes and Baker had bought them precious seconds with their lives. Meanwhile, the 3rd Battle Fleet engaged the defensive screen. Admiral Blackwood needed to keep the swarm focused on the external threat. If they realized Marines were inside the node, they would send forces to deal with them. The space battle was savage. Human ships and swarm vessels fired at each other at close range. Explosions lit up the darkness. The cruiser Warpath was hit badly. Its hull was breached in multiple places. Fire spread through the ship. Commander Jeff Parker was the captain of the Warpath. He knew his ship was dying. He ordered his crew to evacuate. Then he did something incredible. He aimed his dying ship at a cluster of swarm vessels and activated the engines at full power. The Warpath crashed into the enemy formation. The explosion destroyed 5 swarm ships. Parker's sacrifice bought the fleet valuable time. But watching good people die was tearing at Admiral Blackwood's heart. Inside the command node, the Marines reached the final charge point. All the explosives were planted. But there was a problem. The swarm had realized what was happening. They were sealing passages, cutting off escape routes. Captain Gomez counted her Marines. Only 27 were left. They were trapped. The extraction pods were too far away. They would never make it. Major Peterson made the hardest decision of his life. Rachel, take the team to the extraction point. I will stay and trigger the charges manually. Gomez refused. Sir, I can stay. You should lead them out. Peterson shook his head. That is an order, Captain. These Marines need a leader to get them home. You are that leader. Now go, Gomez wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She saluted him one last time. Then she led the remaining Marines toward the extraction point. Peterson stood alone at the detonation control. Swarm creatures were coming from all directions. He fired his weapon, holding them back. His ammunition was running low. It did not matter. He only needed a few more seconds. The 27 Marines reached the extraction pods. They launched just as swarm forces arrived. The pods flew away from the node as fast as they could. Major Peterson pressed the detonation button. His last words were transmitted to the fleet. Mission accomplished. The command node exploded. The blast was incredible. It tore through the massive bioship like it was made of paper. The explosion spread to the defensive screen. Dozens of swarm vessels were caught in the blast and destroyed. The remaining swarm forces immediately lost coordination. Their movements became random and confused. Without the command node, they were like animals without a brain. Admiral Blackwood saw the opening. All ships, attack now. Do not let them regroup. The third battle fleet surged forward. They tore into the confused swarm forces. The battle that had been so hard became suddenly easy. Within 3 hours, the swarm presence in the Kepler sector was destroyed. The fleet gathered together after the battle. The mood was strange. They had won a great victory, but the cost was high. 13 Marines were dead, including Major Peterson. The warpath was destroyed. Hundreds of crew members were wounded. Captain Gomez returned to the Valkyrie. Her armor was scorched and damaged. Her face was covered with tears and sweat. She went straight to Admiral Blackwood's office. The Admiral looked up. Gomez stood at attention and saluted. Mission accomplished, ma'am. Major Peterson stayed behind to ensure detonation. He died a hero. Admiral Blackwood stood and returned the salute. Then she did something unexpected. She hugged Gomez. The tough Marine commander finally broke down and cried. Memorial services were held the next day. Every person who died was honored. Their names were read aloud. Their stories were told. The fleet promised to remember them always. Ambassador Veltara attended every service. She had never seen humans grieve before. It touched her deeply. These warriors who fought so bravely also felt pain and loss. They were not emotionless killing machines. They were people who cared deeply about each other. After the last service, Veltara spoke with Admiral Blackwood. Your people have sacrificed so much for us. We can never repay this debt. The Admiral shook her head. We did not come here for payment. We came because it was the right thing to do. Your people needed help and we were able to give it. That is enough. The victory in the Kepler sector was broadcast across the galaxy. Aliens in every system heard the news. The swarm had been beaten. The humans had destroyed a command node. For the first time since the swarm appeared, there was hope. The third battle fleet needed rest. The ships were damaged. The crews were exhausted. Many were dealing with the pain of losing friends. Admiral Blackwood ordered a 48-hour stand-down. Everyone needed time to recover. Captain Rachel Gomez was promoted to major. She took command of the Marine detachment. It was a job she never wanted but accepted with honor. On the first day in her new role, she held a memorial service for Major Peterson. She stood before hundreds of people. Her voice was strong, even though her heart was breaking. Kyle Peterson taught me what it means to be a leader. He showed me that true courage is not about being fearless. It is about being afraid and doing your duty anyway. He died protecting people he never met. That is the kind of person we should all try to be. Many people cried during the service. Even tough Marines wiped tears from their eyes. Ambassador Veltara stood at the back quietly weeping. She was learning that humans felt emotions deeply. They loved their friends and grieved their losses. While the fleet rested, bad news arrived from Earth Command. Long-range scouts had mapped the remaining swarm forces. There were 6 more command nodes spread across multiple sectors. The swarm was pulling back and consolidating its forces. They were preparing for something big. Lieutenant Sarah Kemp studied the data for hours. She discovered a disturbing pattern. The swarm was not random in its attacks. It was selective. Each species it consumed added new abilities. The swarm was collecting technology and biology like someone gathering tools. Based on their trajectory, Sarah calculated where the swarm was heading. The galactic core. That is where the oldest and most advanced civilizations lived. If the swarm reached the core and consumed those species, it would become unstoppable. Admiral Blackwood sent an urgent message to Earth. She needed reinforcements. She needed supplies, medical support, and more ships. The third battle fleet had proven humans could fight the swarm. But one fleet was not enough to win this war. President Victoria Kane responded quickly. She addressed the Terran Coalition Assembly. Her speech was broadcast across all human space. Our brothers and sisters are fighting for the survival of the galaxy. They have shown incredible courage. They have sacrificed so much. Now they need our help. I am asking the Assembly to authorize full mobilization. We will send everything we have to support them. The Assembly voted. Every single member voted yes. Within days, the 4th and 7th battle fleets were ordered to deploy. Reserve forces were called up. Shipyards worked around the clock building new warships. The industrial might of humanity was fully activated. While waiting for reinforcements, Admiral Blackwood began working with alien specialists. The Cooperative Council species wanted to help. They brought their own skills and knowledge. The Scivistories were master engineers. They helped modify human ship systems for better efficiency. Engines ran cooler. Shields lasted longer. Weapons recharged faster. The improvements were remarkable. The Kryn were an insect-like species with incredible intelligence networks. They had spies and scouts everywhere. They shared information about swarm movements. This intelligence was invaluable for planning operations. Dr. Nina Scott worked with Scivistories medical personnel. Together, they developed new treatments for swarm bioweapon injuries. The swarm's weapons caused terrible wounds, but with the new treatments, more people could be saved. Amy Sullivan collaborated with Kryn communications experts. They improved the fleet's electronic warfare capabilities. Now humans could jam swarm communications and hack into their bioelectric networks more easily. Captain Emma Wright was promoted to Rear Admiral. She was given command of the strike carrier Relentless. Her job was to develop new tactics using combined human-alien forces. She spent weeks running simulations and training exercises. Human fighters worked alongside Scivistories engineering drones. The drones could disable enemy ships without destroying them. Kryn infiltration specialists provided real-time intelligence during battles. The combined forces were more effective than anyone fighting alone. After 3 weeks, the reinforcements arrived. The 4th and 7th battle fleets brought 50 additional warships, thousands of fresh Marines, mountains of supplies and ammunition. The combined fleet was now the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Admiral Blackwood felt more confident. With this many ships, they could take the fight to the swarm. They could destroy more command nodes. They could actually win this war. But the swarm had been planning too. Just as the reinforcements finished integrating with the 3rd Fleet, the swarm launched a massive coordinated attack. They hit 3 locations simultaneously. It was clear they had been studying human tactics. They designed their attack to split the human forces. Admiral Blackwood faced a terrible choice. She could divide her fleet and defend all 3 locations, but that would spread her forces thin. Or she could concentrate her strength and accept losses elsewhere. She made a hard decision. She would commit the bulk of the fleet to one front. They would destroy that swarm group completely. The other 2 fronts would have minimum defensive forces. It was a calculated risk. Some people would die. But overwhelming force at one point might end the battle faster. The main fleet engaged the swarm in the Orion sector. It was the biggest space battle humanity had ever fought. Hundreds of ships on both sides clashed in a massive brawl. The fighting lasted for 2 full days. Jake Martinez coordinated tactical operations from the Valkyrie. He barely slept. His team worked in shifts, but Jake stayed at his post. He felt responsible for every ship, every life. The stress was enormous. The human fleet used new tactics. They were unpredictable. They changed formations constantly. They used the Scivistories drones to create confusion. The swarm struggled to adapt quickly enough. After 48 hours of brutal fighting, the human fleet won. They destroyed another command node. An entire swarm segment was eliminated. It was a great victory, but the cost was terrible. At the other 2 fronts, the defensive forces were overrun. 2 refugee stations were destroyed. Thousands of civilians died. 3 human cruisers were lost. The victory felt hollow. Admiral Blackwood sat in her quarters, staring at the casualty reports. The numbers blurred together. So many dead. So many families who would never see their loved ones again. Had she made the right choice? Could she have saved more people? Jake found her there. He knocked quietly on the door. The Admiral looked up. Her eyes were red. "Come in, Jake." He sat down across from her. He could see the pain in her face. "You made the best decision you could with the information you had. We destroyed a command node. That saved millions of lives in the long run." Blackwood shook her head. "But those civilians at the refugee stations, they trusted us to protect them. I failed them. You did not fail anyone. The swarm killed them, not you. You are doing everything humanly possible to win this war." Major Gomez visited later. She brought something with her. It was a data chip containing Major Peterson's final recording. His armor had a black box that saved everything. Gomez played the recording for the Admiral. Peterson's voice filled the room. "If anyone hears this, I want you to know something. Being a soldier means making hard choices. It means bearing burdens that civilians should never have to carry. Sometimes good people die. Sometimes we cannot save everyone. But we keep fighting anyway. Because the alternative is letting evil win, and we can never let that happen." The recording ended. Admiral Blackwood wiped her eyes. Peterson was right. The pain of command was part of the job. She could not let doubt cripple her. Too many people were counting on her. Ambassador Veltara came to see the Admiral that evening. She brought tea from her home world. The two women sat together in silence for a while. Then Veltara spoke. "In Scivari culture, we have a saying, the measure of a leader is not perfection. It is the willingness to continue despite failure, to carry the weight of loss and still move forward. You have saved far more lives than you have lost, and the fight is not over yet." Those words helped. Admiral Blackwood felt strength returning. She was not perfect. She had made mistakes. But she was still here. She could still fight. She could still make a difference. The next morning she returned to the bridge with renewed determination. The crew saw the change in her. Their admiral was back, ready to lead, ready to finish this war. Intelligence reports showed 4 more command nodes still operational. The swarm was still a threat, but the humans had proven they could win. They had allies now. They had experience. And they had something the swarm did not have. They had hope. Admiral Blackwood called her senior staff together. They gathered around the holographic display. She looked at each of them. These people had become more than colleagues. They were family. We have won important victories. We have also suffered terrible losses, but we are not done. The swarm is still out there. We need to find a way to end this war decisively. No more half measures. No more playing defense. We are going to take the fight to them. Lieutenant Sarah Kemp stepped forward. She had been working on something. A theory. What if all the command nodes were connected to something bigger? A prime node. A master intelligence controlling everything. If we could find and destroy that prime node, the entire swarm might collapse. The room went quiet. It was a big idea. If Sarah was right, they had a... Lieutenant Sarah Kemp worked day and night. She analyzed data from every destroyed swarm vessel. She studied the command nodes they had destroyed. She was looking for a pattern, a connection, something that would prove her theory about a prime node. After 2 weeks, she found it. The bioelectric signatures from all swarm segments showed quantum entanglement. They were all connected to something, a central intelligence, a master node controlling everything from one location. Amy Sullivan helped track the quantum signatures back to their source. It took days of work. But finally, they found it. The prime node was deep in the Void Nebula. It was a region of space filled with radiation storms and gravitational anomalies. Normal sensors could not work there. Admiral Blackwood called a war council. Every senior officer attended. Even Ambassador Veltara was there. They looked at the data Sarah and Amy had collected. The plan was dangerous. They would take the entire combined fleet into the Void Nebula. They would find the prime node and destroy it. Without the central control, all swarm segments would lose coordination. They would become manageable threats that could be dealt with individually. The risks were enormous. The nebula was treacherous. Ships could be torn apart by gravitational forces. The prime node would be heavily defended. Once they went in, there would be no retreat, no reinforcements. It was all or nothing. Jake looked at the tactical display. This is going to be the biggest battle in human history. Admiral Blackwood nodded. Yes. And we are going to win it. Prepare the fleet. We leave in 48 hours. The next 2 days were busy. Engineers reinforced ships. They modified sensors for the nebula's conditions. Marines checked their weapons and armor. Medical teams prepared for mass casualties. Everyone knew this might be their last mission. The night before departure, something special happened. People gathered in the main hangar bay of the Valkyrie. Humans and aliens mixed together. They shared stories and songs from their different cultures. The barriers between species seemed to disappear. Major Gomez led her Marines in a traditional war chant. It was loud and powerful. To everyone's surprise, the alien crew members joined in. They did not know the words, but they added their voices. The sound echoed through the ship. It was beautiful. Ambassador Veltara stood and spoke to the gathered crowd. My people always feared humans. We thought you were too violent, too dangerous. We were wrong. We mistook your fierce protectiveness for savagery. Now I understand. Humans fight not because you love war. You fight because you refuse to let innocent people suffer. That makes you the bravest species I have ever known. Many people wiped tears from their eyes. Veltara's words meant everything. This war had brought different species together. They were no longer just allies. They were friends. The next morning, the combined fleet entered the Void Nebula. The formation was tight. Ships stayed close together. Visual communication replaced electronic sensors. It was like going back to ancient times. The environment was hostile. Radiation storms battered the shields. Gravitational eddies tried to pull ships off course. Several vessels suffered damage just from traveling through the nebula. But they pushed forward. They had come too far to turn back now. After 6 hours of difficult navigation, they found it. The prime node was massive. It was 30 kilometers long, the largest living thing anyone had ever seen. It pulsed with sickly bioluminescence. Around it were hundreds of thousands of swarm vessels, a living shield protecting their master. Admiral Blackwood took a deep breath. This was it, the final battle. Everything they had fought for came down to this moment. All ships, engage. Show them what we are made of. The combined fleet surged forward. Every ship fired at once. The space around them erupted in violence. Explosions lit up the darkness. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously. The scale of the battle was beyond imagination. Human dreadnoughts exchanged fire with swarm capital ships at incredibly close range. Fighter squadrons led by Rear Admiral Wright punched through defensive screens. Sivari engineering drones disabled enemy vessels. Kryn intelligence officers provided real-time targeting data. Jake coordinated the battle from his station. His screen showed hundreds of contacts. He directed multiple engagements at once. Ships moved according to his commands. It was like conducting a deadly orchestra. The fighting was savage. Ships were destroyed on both sides. Good people died. But the fleet pushed forward with unstoppable momentum. They had trained for this. They were ready. Captain Tony Valdez commanded the cruiser Neptune's Fury. He saw something important. The swarm's defensive layers were regenerating faster than they could be destroyed. They needed a new approach. Valdez made a decision. He ordered his crew to evacuate to escape pods. Then he aimed his ship directly at the prime node. He activated the engines at maximum power. The Neptune's Fury crashed into the prime node's outer hull. The impact created a massive breach. Through that breach, Major Gomez's Marines launched. 200 Marines in drop pods flew into the heart of the enemy. Inside the prime node was a nightmare. Biological structures pulsed with life. Hostile organisms attacked from every direction. The Marines fought through layers of defenders. Every meter was contested. Every room was a battle. Sergeant Danny Cruz planted demolition charges at critical points. But this node was different. It was aware. It knew what they were doing. It began sealing passages behind them, cutting off their escape. Gomez realized the truth. They were not getting out. She made the hardest decision of her life. She ordered her Marines to plant all their charges. Then they set up a defensive perimeter. They would hold as long as they could. Back on the Valkyrie, Dr. Nina Scott was studying the prime node's bioelectric patterns. She made a crucial discovery. She shared it with Lieutenant Sarah Kemp. The node was not just coordinating the swarm. It was the swarm. Every organism was an extension of this one vast intelligence. Sarah and Amy realized something important. The quantum-entangled communication worked both ways. If they broadcast a specific frequency at the moment of detonation, they could send a feedback loop through every swarm entity simultaneously. It would destroy them all at once. The message was sent to Major Gomez. She adjusted the detonation sequence. Amy reconfigured the fleet's communication arrays. Everything had to be perfectly synchronized. They would only get one chance. The Marines held their position. Wave after wave of swarm creatures attacked them. They were running out of ammunition, but they did not give up. They fought for every second. Finally, everything was ready. Gomez activated the detonation sequence. The charges exploded. In that exact moment, Amy broadcast the feedback frequency. The effect was instant and overwhelming. Every swarm vessel within the nebula stopped moving. Across the galaxy, swarm segments began to convulse and die. The prime node tore itself apart from within. The massive structure fragmented into countless pieces. The defensive screen collapsed. Within hours, the swarm threat was ended. The war was over, but victory came at a terrible cost. Major Gomez and her 200 Marines were lost. Captain Valdez and his crew were gone. Dozens of ships were destroyed. The casualty lists were pages long, yet billions of lives were saved. The galaxy was free. The surviving fleet limped back to the Kepler sector. Word of the victory spread across the galaxy. Species that had hidden in fear emerged. The Cooperative Council reformed, this time with human participation. The massive task of rebuilding began. Admiral Blackwood was promoted to Fleet Admiral. She received the Coalition Medal of Valor, but she did not feel like celebrating. Too many good people had died. She presided over memorial services for every fallen soldier. Each name was read aloud. Each life was honored. Ambassador Veltara delivered a historic speech before the reformed Cooperative Council. She proposed full membership for humanity and a permanent defensive alliance. The measure passed unanimously. For the first time, humans were welcomed into galactic civilization, not as outsiders but as protectors and partners. 6 months later, things were different. The galaxy was at peace. Refugees returned home to rebuild. Humans worked alongside aliens in reconstruction efforts. New friendships formed. Old prejudices faded away. Jake Martinez, now a captain, commanded his own ship. The newly built frigate Valiant patrolled the borders of the Kepler sector. The region was peaceful now. Children played in the rebuilt stations. Families were reunited. Lieutenant Sarah Kemp established a research institute to study the swarm remnants. They wanted to make sure nothing like this ever happened again. Dr. Nina Scott ran a medical exchange program. She trained alien physicians in human techniques. Knowledge was shared freely. Amy Sullivan led a new communications division. She made sure the galaxy stayed connected. Early warning systems were installed everywhere. If another threat appeared, everyone would know immediately. Fleet Admiral Blackwood stood on the bridge of Unity 1. It was a new space station, built jointly by humans and aliens. It represented the new era of cooperation. She looked out at the stars and thought about those who did not live to see this moment. Major Peterson, Major Gomez, Captain Valdez, Private Chen, Corporal Hughes, Private Baker, Commander Parker, and so many others. Their sacrifice had created this peace. She would never forget them. Ambassador Veltara visited her often. The two women had become close.